Hello, you beautiful people out there, and welcome to the Banner Gaming's Ahead of the Curve, episode 10. Today on Ahead of the Curve, we're going to talk about Warcraft Alpha is back in the hizzy! Woo! And Hearthstone, an odd developer comment. Interesting, not odd. Interesting developer comment videos out. We're going to discuss that a little bit. Diablo patch 2.4 is out. We can go into a little bit more depth this time into the Diablo patch. And Greymaine. He's a new hero in Heroes of the Storm. He's released on hard for a difficulty. Very interesting. We're going to talk about our thoughts, and we're going to discuss our feelings on him. And of course, we're going to end as we tuck ourselves into bed with story time with Janine as we go into the story of Reaper Nightmare Stories. This is Kim Asavix.
I'm Naomi.
And this is Wisdom. As always, we're going to start off here with This Week in Warcraft.
No, this week in Warcraft, I got a good story. So, let me tell you. I did a tavern brawl last week, okay? And I don't know if I missed this the first time around in Hearthstone, but this was awesome. Okay, so let me set the scene. In this tavern brawl, you and your opponent team up to fight a 95 health monster. Alright? So you're not fighting each other. And what this monster has taunt, and he goes from one side of the board to the other. So if it's this person's turn, if my turn, he's going to be on my opponent's side of the board, but he's not really my opponent. And if it's my opponent's turn, he's going to be on my side of the board. And we have cards that help each other. Like, I have, like, the zombies that die, and, like, you get pre-made decks. I had the zombies that die, and, you know, you give your opponent life, and he had the cards that, you know, draw 2 cards for each player, give 2 life to each player. Like, we had cards that helped each other out while trying to defeat this boss. And what this boss would do is he had a couple moves. He would either take his 2 starting attack and hit us both. He would increase his attack by 1 or 2. Or he would do his attack damage to 3 minions on the board. Or destroy the highest level minion on the board. So it was very interesting. Like, you obviously didn't want his attack to go up because, like, I got to the end of the boss fight, it's like 10 HP. He does that to both heroes. It sucks. But you were working together to take down this monster. And it was a completely different game. And I really hope this is Blizzard dipping their feet into, like, possibly doing, like, if anybody's played Magic before.
No one has ever played Magic before.
No.
Ever.
It's one of those things where you can play as a team, and it's really fun. And you can do 2v2, 3v3, you can go on a circle and just attack whatever. I hope this is Blizzard's way of going, maybe just taking the first step into 2v2 combat or team combat. I think the next adventure mode, if they do like team boss fights, that would be amazing. It was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. And that was one of the biggest things that stuck out for me in Warcraft.
I didn't do a lot this week in World of Warcraft.
Yeah, cut off, Wisdom. Stopped in your tracks.
I did LFR and some mythic progression with the guild, but I didn't get to do a lot. LFR was actually really bad, I think, because I had a lot of real life stuff to do, and I was just thinking about all the real life stuff I could be doing.
Wait a second, you're saying LFR wasn't fun for you?
No, it wasn't. And then chemo.
Are you okay? LFR is always the most exciting thing. You're burning up.
So,
ow.
So, anyway, so then chemo came on, and then it was fun because we would battle for first place in DPS. But other than that, I really haven't done anything in WoW this week.
And this week in Warcraft, I picked up my Reigns of the Heavenly Crimson Cloud Serpent, which is something I've been after for quite a while. We're actually going to talk a little bit more about this when we get into the actual patch notes here, because this achievement was recently hotfixed, making it much easier for many more players to obtain.
And who was the amazing stud that helped you get this?
I think it was Janine. It was one of our hunters, I don't remember, but...
Janine, you're an amazing stud, apparently.
Yeah.
Your words, not mine.
So, let's get into the Warcraft news.
All right, so let's jump in here with the changes to some big rating metas. All right,
I
so
jumped in.
what? I'm glad. Just stay in the water. It feels great. So we've got two changes here. One is to Glory of the Pandaria Raider. It no longer requires the achievement Show Me Your Moves, which can only be completed with a full raid group regardless of level, right? So you need all 10, or if you're really ballsy, all 25 people to be in the group, coordinated, and successfully getting the achievement. That, was something that they decided wasn't really necessary anymore, so that's been axed from the meta. It is still an obtainable achievement, so it's still in the game if you want it, and if you are a completionist, you will still need to go get it with a full group, but it's been removed.
Can I tell you how happy I am? Because we tried that at the end of Pandaria, and it was a pain. If anybody's done Stamp, the one where you have to kill Hans and Franz without anybody getting hit by a stamper, take that and multiply the craziness and the frustration by 5 or 6 times, and that's this achievement.
We actually successfully completed the achievement a couple times, but we only had 8 people in our group, which was why it was so frustrating for us. But then they've also changed Glory of the Dragon Soul Raider, and this one is a little bit harder for me to understand. They've taken out Holding Hands, which is on Hagera Stormbinder. It's actually a soloable achievement at pretty much any level that you outgear. I did it at level 90 by myself as a monk. I've heard about a lot of people with pets, so pet classes having a lot of success with this, but you don't actually need one. You can still get the achievement either way. So
what do you have to do for that one?
You connect lightning pillars, and it's supposed to take 7 or 8 people, but it's been changed so that you can scoot yourself around quickly enough to make it possible. I mean, it's been.
I think me and you did that. Actually, a while ago, a long time ago.
I've helped more people than I can count get it. It's just it's one of those things that. I mean, I've helped you. I've helped people in my old guild. I've helped, people in our guild now and things like that. So it's not a hard one to get, but you can do it by yourself. So I'm a little bit surprised that one was removed. But either way, we have a whole bunch of people with their new mounts now. So kudos to you for that. If you're interested, go check out the metas. They're not particularly challenging to do. I think it took Chemo and I maybe a half an hour to get 2 of them, and that was one of the more complicated ones to try and do with just 2 people. So by and large, you can solo all of them. There are a couple exceptions there, but.
And if you guys really want, let us know. If you want to looking for a venture for that kind of meta stuff, we'll make videos for you. Let us know what you want. Holla at us. Holla at your boy. Continue.
All right, moving on. The Legion Alpha is back up, so the winter break is over, not just for students, but for developers as well. And we have got some exciting new news. The level cap has been raised from 104 to 106, which is not a particularly big deal. But we've got some new zones. Val-Shara, I think is how that's pronounced, is a new zone. To me, it looks a lot like Mount Hyjal, at least the one that was introduced in Cataclysm. They've just put it somewhere else and updated the textures and probably put a couple different quests in there. The Shaman class hall is now available, playable. They've got their unique teleportation spell in the game. One interesting thing in their class hall that I don't think we've seen in any other, they have a sort of lights out style game that's played with totems that I think is kind of fun. For those of you who don't know, or maybe I'm not referring to this by its technical name, it's the game where you've got like a grid of lights, and some of them are on and some of them are off. And whenever you change one, all of the adjacent ones change to their opposite state. So you're trying to get the board to be all on or all off, depending on which copy you're playing. But it's a fun little mini game.
I thought you were gonna say they had a small room that played Bob Marley, and they all had a bunch of hookahs and other materials that shamans might be known for.
They're shamans, not druids.
No, druids are more I think like LSD. I can turn into a bear, man. No, you can't. Oh, I can turn into meow, meow.
For those of you who are big fans of pet battling, it looks like we're going to have the new PvE pet battling hub be in New Dalaran, or I guess at least I'm going to be calling it New Dalaran, so get used to it. It's probably still just called Dalaran, but either way, there's been a bunch of data mined PvE pets to fight and stuff there. I have no idea if there's a PvP component, none of it's playable, and I don't have alpha access anyway. So if you like pet battles, get excited for that, because they're not neglecting you.
Gotta catch them all, baby.
Gosh, even in Pokemon, that is a tall order, but in World of Warcraft, it's a little bit silly.
Yeah.
All
I think
right,
Pokemon's up to like 1,000 now or something like crazy ridiculous. I miss the days of the simple 151. I think I was the only people that, side note, that had an actual legitimate Mew, not a
moving
game
on to
hack
something
Mew.
more interesting.
I got it from an
Itemization
exposition.
changes. Itemization changes.
Now I know how to
There's
get you
no
to
more
yell.
bonus armor or spirit. And maybe this was something that was announced a while ago, but there's no more bonus armor or spirit in the game as stats. They've just been axed like along, they've gone the way of multi-strike. But something that is new is that rings and neck pieces will no longer have, at least what we're referring to here, as primary stats. So they're not going to have strength, agility, or intellect on them. They will still have stamina and 2 secondaries. In some respects, I think that this is a good thing because it means that we can share a lot more of the loot, so there will be fewer of them dropping across a raid instance, which means more pieces of better gear will drop instead. And then we also have all of the primary stats on cloaks. So I don't know why you do it all one way and all not the other way, but for whatever reason, this is the route that they've decided to take with it. So you're going to have agility, strength, and intellect active on a cloak all the time, regardless of your specialization. So
let me ask you a question, Wisdom. In the effort of they have been successful with some of these off stats, but they have been unsuccessful with some of the off stats that's been axed through the years, and some of them are just plain boring. Wouldn't it make sense? I mean, maybe they just do it for the longevity of the raid tier. Although I feel like we could actually do a deep dive on different ways to actually make rating have a better longevity while not frustrating players. But why not just get rid of off stats? So if you're a healer, the more int you have, it automatically builds a base spirit into you. Why I have to every person has to okay, once I'm at crit cap, then I'm gonna go after this. Oh, these 2 items are close. Which one's better? Let me simcraft it. Wouldn't it be? And I know this is not going to be a popular. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of arguments both ways, but wouldn't it just be easier to have just main stats and say screw the off stats altogether and just be able to grab gear and clearly see if it's better or not without simming? And yes, we know certain specs have best slots, but once you get to a certain percent, then you got to go somewhere else, and then wouldn't it just be easy?
It would be easier. That's true, but it would be horrendously boring. Because one of the things that having multiple secondary stats allows you to do is if you have different kinds of viable builds, you can pick and choose what stats you'd be more interested in stacking. Like for myself as a tank, I can go the mastery route and take less and less and less damage the more mastery I stack, and then as kind of a kickback do a little bit more damage, or I can go the crit route and I can take, or even multi-strike, and build for all the damage in the world, but be a lot squishier. So
that's true, but I feel like the talent system in the artifact weapons is going to help balance out that problem. You can use some of your artifact talents to survive or to do more damage, and have
but you get all of those.
Now I understand because I didn't think you would agree with me based on your playstyle. Naomi, what do you think about something like that?
Personally, I have to agree with Wisdom. I think that it takes away the depth of getting gear. I feel like it's boring and stupid, and they should keep it the way that it is.
Yeah, and I think that, if we just sort of abandon the idea of having secondary stats on gear and you're only running after one particular kind of stat, then, I mean, sure, you can quantify what a direct upgrade is, but it also it becomes disinteresting. At that point, it's no longer motivating to me to keep on looking for better pieces of gear, unless the art is really, really stellar and it's the model that I'm looking for. But even in that kind of a circumstance, why put in all the effort unless you're getting a relevant, interesting, tangible difference in the way that your gameplay feels, right? Playing with 40% crit as opposed to 30% mastery are 2 very different play styles, at least for my particular specialization. And losing that outright to just to say, oh, I have 700 more agility than I did at the start of the tier, so that makes me a better monk, is weird.
I don't like it. I feel like it's stupid. I want them to keep it the way that it is. if I'm just looking for agility or something like that, it takes away so much thought, and they're already taking away a lot of thought to the game. And even though I'm a newer player, and you would think that that would be a good thing for me, it's not. I think World of Warcraft is cool because it's so in-depth and it's so complicated, compared to other video games where you just pew-pew and pick up guns. I think that's one of the things that makes World of Warcraft the way that it is how much depth they put into it. So if I'm just picking up something with one stat, I feel like that takes away from it.
And I'm not saying that I don't want to get flamed for this on the comments. I'm not saying that I
Flame
agree.
it hard.
I'm not saying that I agree. It's just that it was just putting a topic out there to discuss. You know, they talk about getting rid of reforging to make it simpler. They got rid of, the long attunement quests and key quests and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, I got 2 items that were 10 levels higher than what I was wearing the other day, but they didn't have my best off stats. And I'm like, is this better? Because it's 10 levels higher and it's really close. They have to sim craft it. And either maybe if Warcraft put something in the game where you could like analyze the item better to see if it was better, but like it's just frustrating when you have to go get loot, get happy, go sim craft it, see if it's better. It's just more of it's a little bit of a pain. Is it worth getting rid of it all? I'm not saying it is. Just discussing.
I know that a lot of people that I talk to that do not play World of Warcraft don't want to play World of Warcraft because of things like stats. Like even League of Legends players, they think World of Warcraft stats are too complicated. And that's saying a lot. I wouldn't play League of Legends. That's not my type of game. But I've heard people say things like, oh, I hate that about World of Warcraft. That's why I can't play it. It's too complicated. I just want to pick up gear and get an upgrade. I don't want to have to look at the stats and all of that. So maybe they're trying to cater to get more people to play, but then there's a question of, should they be catering to what everybody else is, or should it just be a World of Warcraft player-specific game, where just our type of people play the game? Or should they cater it so that everybody wants to play it? I think that's,
And they have catered so everybody wants to play it.
Yeah, but is that a good thing or not?
Yeah, if they continue to make it easier and less refined, I think that's a mistake, because
that's how I feel.
I am a proponent for, generally speaking, more complexity makes a more engaging gameplay. But being able, and I know that that's a pretty unpopular opinion, because I was a fan of reforging. A ton of people didn't like that kind of a system. But the further away we get from being able to play with the stats in your gear and things like that and make those meaningful choices, the further away from an enjoyable game it becomes for me. And I think it's interesting and pretty meaningful to hear somebody like Naomi have this kind of an opinion, because it means that, there is coming a point where it becomes too simplistic for even for somebody who doesn't want to put a ton of thought into, is it an upgrade or not? It doesn't have to be horrendously complicated. And I think that one of the things that we overlook a lot, because we play really well and we care about those min-maxy little choices of, is this piece a lot better, just a little bit better, what should I be doing with my gear, and those kinds of choices. But there are a lot of people who just say, oh look, it's a higher item level piece, I'm gonna wear it. Like, zero caring about the stats and things like that. And if that's what they want, then they already have that option in the game. Right? If it's too complicated, just overlook it, don't care, and do whatever it is that you want. And some people will give you a hard time for it, but at the same time, and that's the attitude you're bringing to the game, the chances of you being interested in playing at the higher levels of, complexity, and really wanting to play with top tier players or guilds and things like that, that's pretty unlikely. So if you want a simple experience, there's the opportunity for that. If you want a complicated experience, there should still be the opportunity for that. And removing that option from players is going to cost you a lot of long-term subscribers, long-term players, people who want to play at a high level, and those kinds of things, because you're really detracting a lot about, you're taking away a lot of the things that people enjoy about the game.
I agree with that, and I feel like even though I'm not at that min-maxer level right now, obviously, eventually I would like to be the kind of player that doesn't have to look up can just figure it out right off the bat. I want to be complex. I want to know exactly, everything about my class and everything about how I play. Eventually, I will get there. But if they take stuff out that makes it so I can't be that kind of player, I'm going to be really pissed. Because then it's just going to be like another game to me. It's not going to be like World of Warcraft. So thinking about the future of World of Warcraft like that kind of makes me upset. But if they keep it the way it is, like how Wisdom said, where there's always an option, you can be that kind of player, or you can be like a regular, just, gamer, not really caring about that whole complex depth stuff, that's fine. But if they take it away altogether, I think then that's a problem.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like detract that far into the show. That could have been like a mini deep dive episode in itself. But it was just a thought I had.
See, now we've got a deep dive with Naomi. So we've got more than enough news to talk about for a couple shows here, but one of the big things that we do want to point out about what's going on in the alpha right now is we've data mined a couple of really exciting mounts. Personally, I'm very excited for the up-and-coming Fox mount, which I think looks wonderful. I mean, I don't know quite what skeleton they're using, but whatever it is, it looks like it's going to look good. And they've also data mined a fish mount that looks like a little bit like the old whale shark. So I'm curious if we're going to see like another world boss style drop, something like that. So it seems like it'll be interesting.
I want to ride a whale shark. Yeah, buddy. The Fox mount looks sexy as hell, too. We'll pop two pictures up magically in our editing process right here. So, honestly, really cool looking mounts. Curious on how we're going to get them. But we've talked a lot about Warcraft. There's some news we'll save for next week, which is always a good thing. Extra news is better than not enough. Let's go down to the hearth and let's discuss some Hearthstone. And this week, there's been a very interesting developers YouTube video post by Ben Brode. Now, Wisdom and I interpreted this slightly differently, but essentially... Huh?
Interpreted.
Talking shit?
Interpreted.
So, apparently, there's been a lot of talk in the community, and I don't honestly... I'm not deep into the Hearthstone community like I am in WoW, although I am an avid Hearthstone player. Apparently, there's talk of them not producing enough content and or the features they want, like tournament mode and that kind of thing.
When do they ever produce enough content for you guys?
Hey. I think they're doing a wonderful job. Honestly, the Hearthstone team, between spreading it out between expansion and then, adventure mode and expansion, then adventure mode, and then adding Tavern Brawl.
I was making fun of the pessimistic fans.
I know.
Okay.
I know. And then
I actually think it's an interesting point, right? Because as someone who doesn't play Hearthstone a lot, I look at the content release in Warcraft and I say, okay, well, this is not really up to par, But I look over at Hearthstone and I say, man, it's like they get new stuff like every couple months, right? So the perception across games is very different for someone who doesn't actively play it full time as their only go-to game. So I do think that it's kind of interesting that people see it this way. And one of the things that I got out of at least a couple of the comments that Mr. Brode was making in his video is that it seems like the developers feel almost a little bit... I don't know if scared is the right word of too much negative community feedback, because he was talking about how if he goes so far as to announce something that they even think is interesting, like back before Warlords came out, they were talking about for Warcraft putting in giving everybody like an artifact slot that would give you some sort of fun class specific unique thing that would be a cosmetic difference in your character, and you could upgrade it and unlock it by leveling and doing different tasks and things like that. I think that we got this recycled into the artifacts that we see coming out for Legion, but that was something that came out and they did a couple art posts about that, and we had a lot of people who were really excited. And the negative kickback when nothing ever came of it and they officially announced that they had scrapped the concept was tremendous.
Leave it to Wisdom to bring Warcraft news into Hearthstone literally within the first 5 minutes. So, anyway...
it's a solid parallel.
In all seriousness, I have been very satisfied with the release of content with Hearthstone, and I think it's one of those cases where the player doesn't necessarily know what they want. And let me give you an example. tournament mode can do no harm. I think tournament mode's a great idea. The 2v2 thing I was talking about earlier, or round robin, or like different kind of weird versus mode would be amazing. But let's say they produced expansions faster. Now, I love the way they do it with adventure mode, then a whole new expansion pack, then adventure mode, whole new expansion. Because if every time, like if they didn't have adventure mode and just released expansion packs, or if they release expansion packs faster, like not only would that make them have a hard time balancing it, but I would feel like I was never kind of, in a sense, caught up. Like when I went to the next expansion, I had 5,000 gold. I bought their $50 pack deal. Like I felt ready. Like if they release cards too fast and people are like, oh, I don't have enough gold for this, Blizzard's making it pay to win. I physically don't have enough time to save up enough gold to buy decent cards I need, or at least get enough dust to craft the cards I need for a deck. So they're making it pay to win. So I feel like they should not release expansions faster. And I think that's something that might bite players in the butt. Kind of like player housing, yeah, Blizz needs to take their end of the responsibility, and I'll take mine. We've been wanting player housing for how long? And not only did we get player housing, but we got something better, and look how it backfired. Not that it's the player's fault, but it's something we wanted and it backfired. So I didn't get the scaredness that you got, Wisdom, but I got the fact that they just said they wanted to be careful on what they say because there might be a contradiction, and instead of taking the PR time to explain why they're not doing it because it interacts with this or this poorly, or it's not meeting up with their goals, they can save themselves that headache. Why create extra headache? Just be on the positive. But I think they produce content fast enough, so I kind of disagree with the apparently popular opinion that they don't.
One of the things that I do think is interesting is when you compare, and I mean, I know that this is sort of an apples and oranges comparison here, but when I think about the early access kind of indie games that I have taken the time to buy into, I hear them talk about a lot of stuff, and big chunks of it do not ever make it into the final release. And that's generally pretty positively accepted in that kind of a community. And just that there's such a huge discrepancy even between the players, right? You can have a player who plays Hearthstone and who wants to go play something like Stonehearth, just off the top of my head. And you see these, I know they sound similar, but they're dramatically different games.
Oh, that's a real game? I thought you were joking.
Yeah, no, it's a really good game.
That's hysterical.
And you can see that the development roadmap for something like Stonehearth has got, just leaps and bounds to go, but they're making slow, steady progress, and they're keeping people engaged with the little things that are coming out that are being pushed all the time, right? So there's tons of tiny updates as opposed to the big updates and the substantial ones that don't get much hype, in a game like Hearthstone, where 2 or 3 weeks in advance we hear about something new that's coming out, and then it comes out.
But it's also different though because the community's different. Especially and I know this is kind of Warcraft related, but it's also Hearthstone. A lot of people are invested in all the games, so it's there's a lot of just plain old Blizzard fanboys. It's not like an indie game that you're excited for, but if not everything happens, it's whatever. It's you're either paying monthly subscriptions or you've paid or put so much time into Hearthstone or Blizzard or Warcraft already that more. Not only are you more passionate about it, people with negative comments are more likely to post than people with positive. And when you have a base of, what does Hearthstone have, 20 million, 200 million? I don't know, some insane amount of players registered. That's going to be a lot of feedback. You know what I mean? So
I have a question. So I haven't been following news for long enough, but how often does a producer come and make a video?
It's not a common thing for anything outside of really Warcraft or BlizzCon.
So do you think that they're nervous because they're putting one out there for everybody to see and talking about this? They're addressing it. That's not a very common thing.
I think that it could be out of nervousness, but it also could be out of just people, maybe they're trying to get ahead of it. So instead of being reactive, they're trying to be proactive and really work on the relationship with the fans.
Are they ahead of it?
Well, obviously not, because he's responding to it, unfortunately, at that time.
Yeah,
but I think
mean.
That's better than what some games, I'll give you an example. I hate to go all wisdom on you and talk about a different game during Hearthstone
we
news.
all do it.
But
it's not just wisdom.
I am a big Supercell Clash of Clans fan, and they released an update, and it changed the fundamentals of the game hard. And there was a lot of community outlash, a lot. They even, I think, went from 4-star rating to like a 3-star rating. I mean, when you have that much people, like that's a big change in one update. And it took them 4 weeks to respond to the community about this. Instead of the first week being like, hey, we hear your complaints, we're going to be analyzing it and doing something about it. Like that would have made everybody so much happier than to say, are they listening to us? We're going to keep saying it. Like,
it was like they went on vacation for 4 weeks and then came back and were like, oh, wow, we have to deal with this.
kind of. Like, so I think it's good that Blizzard is getting ahead, and I really think they should do posts about. I think they should have developer posts in all of their games, maybe bi-weekly, weekly, monthly, just letting the player know what's going on and where they're at. I think they should do that with the Legion too. And I know some games, some very successful startup games have really. I can't remember the one I'm thinking of now because it was like pages and pages of just constant communication with the fans and why this isn't on there or why this is added or why this isn't added and their reasoning. Like, Blizzard is good, but they could be better. And I think videos are more effective than blue posts.
But then are they going to feel like they have to make excuses every single time? Or, like, are we just really spoiled brats? Maybe we don't deserve a video explaining why.
And I mean, this is a part of the concern that I was talking about, right? Because you don't see really any of the Blizzard games doing that kind of in-depth communication, and it seems like you get a lot of positive feedback when you hear about, okay, this is like with the whole like early look at new specializations going into Legion, right? Everybody was super hyped for those, and everybody was interested in hearing about what was going on. And even when players didn't like what was happening, getting able to see what was going on, sort of looking behind the curtain, was something that people really appreciated. Yet then we go for 6 months and we don't hear a word about meaningful development or addressing existing problems in the game and things like that. People get upset and it's frustrating. Yet the reason at least that we're hearing being cited in this video, that they don't talk to us, is that if they tell us about something and then it doesn't end up becoming a reality for whatever reason, our own negative pushback prevents them from talking more to us, even though that's what they want. So that's the sort of silly relationship I'm trying to highlight, where the players are not helping this.
Yeah.
No, and I have been watching a lot of social media with players for a long time, and sometimes it gets really hostile, like threats on them and their family and stuff that's way out of line.
I remember people getting really upset about not being able to fly. And I was kind of upset about it too. But then
you don't threaten developers' family because of it.
No, but when I heard that, I'm saying that, it was kind of aggravating. I wanted to fly around, I wanted to explore and that kind of thing. But then I learned that the reason they didn't want us to fly, if I'm right, was because they wanted us to see all of the work that they did. And that made sense to me. I was like, I could see how someone would feel not appreciated when you put a ton of artwork into something that somebody never even looks at because they're just flying over it. So I understood that, and I appreciated that they communicated it to us and weren't just like not saying anything about it. But I could see how that would pose a problem for future stuff.
Well, and they made a great compromise, though. They listened to us. They put it in after we did the achievement. You know what I mean? Like, that was a perfect symbiotic relationship. And now I remember they used to do like monthly posts on Warcraft, I think with the host of the old G4 Game Network show, Olivia. She went to Jon Stewart Daily Show for a while. It was somebody famous. And they had shows for a while. I think it stopped. I haven't heard about it in a long time. But I think it'd be better, instead of a blue post explaining it, they just do videos explaining, like monthly videos, maybe explaining the changes they make and why. Because if explained...
Like water cooler was a good example of that.
Yeah.
That was in text, but that really just fell off the map.
But I'm saying videos too, because like how many times did me and you have to explain to somebody who didn't take the time to read blue post why they put flying, why they took it out, or why it's an achievement? Like, people who are coming back to Legion or WoD without being in WoD are like, oh, we have to do this achievement to fly. I'm like, you missed the whole thing, buddy. Like, they weren't even flying to begin with. And I think the compromise is working because of this. But if they, people who were playing at the time would have just had a video up and it's like, this is why we're doing it. These are the reasons. This is what we think. Not a blue post that people have to go to the website to read. Just like right up on the Battle.net launcher, in people's face. It's kind of like the guild information. How many times do we get asked for vent info by people when it's right in the end? Nobody takes the time to click on guild information to get vent.
And I
You
don't
think they're
think
going to take the time to go on a website?
Just because it's in a video, I don't think they're going to be any more interested. I mean, you could still link it out of the launcher and stuff like that, but at this point, it's moot. Excuse me.
Yes, but a video also helps you build a
mute,
relationship with the developer. It
But-
makes you like them. It builds personality, builds a face to who you're talking to.
But
So when
there's
you
a
threaten
problem
his
with
family, you see like the person you're talking to. It's not just some typing person. Like
It gives
makes
you
it
a
real,
target,
less
so
anonymity.
it's easier to identify them. I see your
That's
point.
not what I meant. But anyway,
No. But I have a point to make. That wouldn't work anyway because they're not producing enough content to make a video every month, and they can't talk about future content because remember that video that we saw where the guy goes underneath the castle and it's content that nobody ever saw. He like bugged
it was
or
like the
something?
secret of Karazhan kind of
Right.
stuff. Yeah.
That looked awesome and really gruesome and morbid and not like anything I had ever seen in World of Warcraft. If they had talked to us about that and then not given it to us, we would have been upset. So
I think you're
They can't talk about future stuff. They have to talk about current stuff, and there's not enough to talk about.
You're misunderstanding, though. I think. Well, you're understanding, but like just to be clear, I don't think they should put videos out talking about what they're going to do. I don't think they should. That's what BlizzCon's for. They don't put videos out talking about what they've done.
I know, but how much have they done?
Reasoning behind things. Well, there's a lot of alpha stuff that's out that is an ongoing discussion with players and changing up all of the classes. You know, people have a big question about why, Death Knights, all the runes were changed to the same one, instead of people like me.
But they're still working on it.
Right, but I think an ongoing discussion is a great thing.
That's set in stone enough that they're not going to change their mind on that, right? I mean, I'm not going to get guard back just because we complain about it enough.
That's true.
But if they tell Wisdom why, like the Death Knights, I know why they took the runes away.
They can tell us why. It doesn't
posts.
change the fact that it's a dumb reason.
Well,
I mean, that's a different conversation.
Well, guard aside, all right.
Then they're gonna get shit for their reasons.
They took the runes away from Death Knights because they didn't want the people to be constantly looking at their resources. They just wanted 6 resources, and they felt it took away a lot of fun from the class. But if you didn't take a time to read the blue post, at least, and it might, listen, you're a different kind of player, Wisdom, than some people are. People like me, that's always deterred me from the class because I had to keep looking at it to see what runes they were. I like 6. I might actually be playing. Not like maining or anything, but I'll play Death Knights more probably because of that, because it was a pain in the butt. So for somebody...
Good UI development.
But I think that those kind of videos would be really, really good. In general.
Wow, we just went completely off.
No, it's disgusting.
So thanks for tuning in for the Hearthstone news. Let's move on to Diablo.
Again, Jerry's last word on Hearthstone. Oh. Careful what you wish for, players. All right? Too much content might be a bad thing. We really feel like they gave content at a good rate, and they got to keep it balanced. Now, let's go on to... Diablo. Season 5 and 2.4 are live. So, I did not get the mount for the Nexus. We never finished our level 70 characters for Season 4. Wah, wah, wah. But...
I didn't even get that far.
Oh, we got to like 40, if I'm not mistaken. But... So, today we're going to cover Wisdom's favorite topic. His most passionate thing about Diablo, so go for it. Have at it, brother.
Well, I mean, I goodness, you make it sound like I'm so experienced about these kinds of things. One of the things that I think is particularly interesting that's out with 5.4 are the set dungeons, right? These are sort of, at least in my interpretation of how they're presented to us, a little bit like challenge modes, in the sense that you get all of the pieces of your set, and then you are given the chance to go into an environment that it's totally set up already. It's going to be the same for everybody who does it and every single time you go in there, right? So that is unique, at least in how normally Diablo kinds of dungeons are presented. So it's not randomly generated, nor are the enemies random. Those are actually predetermined as well. So it's this very kind of scripted, organized environment where you have to work with the bonuses that your set gives you in order to get all the way through. And when you get all the way through, well, I guess it buffs your set pieces and stuff like that. but it doesn't give you anything super special or shiny. So I mean, I think they're going to be worth doing for people who like their set and their set bonuses and things like that. But it's not like you get wings or special cosmetics or anything like that. So
But
they
there's
look
more
like fun.
patches to come, and they could easily, just like Valor, say, hey, we're going to make this relevant again, or more relevant by giving you this. Done. You know what I mean? But I think
Yeah.
it's a really cool idea. Essentially challenge modes in Diablo. Collect a set, you open up a special portal, you do a special levels based on your set and your class, and it's a cool addition. I mean, they're really pumping out content for a free game and not charging for it anymore. I mean, that's great.
Yeah, so some of the other smaller but still noteworthy updates are more stash space. So if you have some extra gold lying around, you can decide to buy some more stash space. And one of the things that we end up talking about, maybe not so much in this series, but in some of our other ones, are just how significant your user interface is. So whenever you are in game, especially when it's customizable like it is in Warcraft, making sure that you have an effective UI is significant. But for a game like Diablo, where it doesn't really support those kinds of player-made additions, you're sort of stuck. And if the vanilla UI for a game isn't effective, well, that's a giant deterrent. I mean, just to go back to the Hearthstone video we were watching before, they're talking about that they went through hundreds of iterations of how the UI should look in the crafting interface and your big catalog of cards and things like that. So to see that the Diablo team is actually wanting to go back and fix some of the UI issues, I think is really interesting. So they're redoing how buffs are displayed to players, and it's not going to be like a total overhaul of the entire system, but it is going to make it a little bit more effective for people. And I do appreciate that they're taking the time to work on things that are significant.
And if you really think about it, like after the game's been out for so long, these are just free patches. To take player feedback and care enough to switch something that doesn't add any actual longevity to the game, but just make it smoother like that is really commendable. Like, hats off.
I think it's really sweet, especially since, having to learn how to edit these videos and stuff and like banging my head up against the wall and like freaking out and that kind of thing has really taught me to appreciate things like that. Because if it's hard for me to edit videos, making something like a UI or changing something that's already coded or something like that is just insane to me. So doing it for free and doing it just to make players happy is also, I really think that's really sweet.
Blizzard is adorable.
He's so cute. Oh, he's a cutie.
And adding more stash space seems simple and might be, but remember we still have the backpack, which in Warcraft, because they can't change that coding. That's why we still have a small backpack. So
integrally tied to your character, evidently at the most basic level.
Yeah. So
Really?
yeah. So them adding a stash base might take a little more work than people
actually think.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it might be like the region bank, where it's relatively straightforward and takes basically no effort.
But again,
cynicism.
You would.
More quality updates. Giving community feedback. So, props to you. Next week, we'll go over some of the new monsters and their designs, talk about them, put some pictures up. It'll be a good time. They added this thing with 16 new monsters, which is
some
really...
of them have fangs.
But, the time, let's get into the Heroes of the Storm! So, let's talk about Greymaine. He is the new hero. He is labeled as hard. So, if we're looking at Mr. Greymaine, I've had some experiences with him this week, and they all have been against him. I did not buy this hero this week. However, I feel like the hard definitely lives up to its name, because I feel like I've played people who absolutely were terrible with him, and they were easy pickings, or people who were wrecking with him. So, as you can see, he is a human worgen. Well, he's a human who transforms into a worgen, and he has a wolf form. And
Rawr.
My experience has been more just owning his face than him owning me. But I guess that speaks to the hard difficulty to play him. Was you have any experience this week with him?
No, I actually haven't had a single encounter up against Greymaine yet. I am kind of curious to see how rough he's going to be. I mean, I get that.
Rough. Rough.
Thanks for really underscoring that one. He reminds me, and maybe this is a bit of a stretch here, but he reminds me of Hammer in the sense that, you sort of got two different forms that you're switching between, and switching between them intelligently is really the mark between a good and a bad Sergeant Hammer. And if you are sieged up when you're not supposed to be, you'll get absolutely annihilated. And if you don't siege when you should be, then you're missing out you're missing out on the potential of Hammer. So, seeing people play Greymaine appropriately is, I think, going to be another very similar sort of circumstance where you know when to go beast mode and to beat the shit out of people, and then you know that you need to get back, or in early game you don't want to go beast mode at all, or that's the only way you want to be, and vice versa. So I think those kinds of distinctions are going to be more important the further into this we get.
That is a really good point, actually. At first I was like, really, Hammer? And I was like, oh, okay, I see where you're going with that. I might buy him. I missed when they were all $5 the sale, because that was like a price where I wouldn't mind just dishing out $5 to try a new hero. But he has a couple abilities. He has Razor Swipe, which is swipes towards the area in front of you and deal heavy damage. He has Inner Beast, which is, gain 50% attack speed for 3 seconds. Basic attacks refresh this duration, which is awesome.
And I do want to highlight this. I think this is going to be one of those points where it shows, just like with Sonya and her ult, this is going to be the mark between a good and a bad Greymaine. Because if you can you can keep that up indefinitely, at least from the way that the text is written. So if you can sustain that throughout an entire team fight instead of letting it fall off, that's going to be a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to get into his talents. We're not going to get deep into it, but it seems like when he goes wolf and he's at you, you need to get away. And having heroes that can peel off you, or, if you don't and you're using him to peel Morales or bust up somebody, I mean, seems great. And then the disengage, which I'm sure I'll call deterrence because I mess up those all the time. He rolls away and shapeshifts to a human. And he also has a hero trait, which is use certain abilities to shift between a human and a worgen. While human, your basic attack is range. While worgen, your basic attack is melee, but deals 40% more damage. So obviously, if you haven't fought him yet, he does. It's like shooting a little pellet gun when he's in his regular form, and when he's in worgen, you just need to make sure that you get away or stun him, or you're not squishy. He has 2 heroics. Mark for the kill, so he shapeshifts into a human, and the shot hitting the first enemy hero for moderate damage. For 5 seconds, they are vulnerable, taking 25% more damage, and you can reactivate this to leap at them and shapeshift into a worgen. Cool. Yeah. And then go for the throat, leap an enemy hero, and shapeshift into a worgen, slashing 3 times for massive total damage. If this kills them, the ability can be used within a second time, as long as it's within 10 seconds. Which... that is really, really cool, too.
I like the other one.
That's funny. I like Go Through the Throat better, to be honest. Because it's kind of like... it reminds me of having a level 20 Nova, where you can keep using the ability over and over again if somebody dies.
Hey, that reminds me a lot of a comment that one of the monks that we make the show notes with was saying the other day. Similarly, I think it's nice to see that we get a hero that's got a lot more lane presence. I feel like the last handful of heroes that we've had that have been released have not been able to really hold their own in the same way. I mean, clearly, you're missing the healing component here, but this reminds me a lot of Butcher when he came out, where I'm expecting someone who really, you see them and you want to get away, and they've got a lot of good ways to get a hold of you again. And so you're still going to be kind of playing that game of, well, how close do I want to get? And you can see somebody like Greymaine holding his own lane for a while. So I like that we're seeing a sort of standalone here.
Yeah, although I will say, I know it's a little odd, but when I played Morales, if I got into one of those weird spots where I just happened to be in a lane by myself for some reason, putting a healing aura on the minion that was up front and then damaging shield when I need it really helped the lane push. Because all the minions would attack the one guy I had a healing aura on and still wouldn't be able to kill it. So if you that was an interesting lane pusher. This guy doesn't have any survivability, but there might be hero traits that be that's really effective. So it's kind of hard to say. He might get some sort because he's marked for under 50% survivability, so he probably has something. But when he gets low, he can disengage and roll away and that kind of stuff.
I bet you he'll get that classic like Illidan style heal on demand.
That's the active. Maybe. I mean, if you lane him with a healer too, oh jeez.
Oh yeah.
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
Shall we move on to Cho'Gall? The only real news here is that he's no longer contagious. So if you didn't get your hands on Cho'Gall, you now have to turn to the store to pick him up, and he's got his I think the bundle is still available if you're interested in getting that skin set along with it, but you can no longer pick up Cho'Gall for free.
And he's heavy, so I have to pick him up for real money. Hey, I wonder if he's you have to pay like 10,000 gold for each half if you don't have it.
I think it's a comprehensive unlock, I bet, but it probably is going to stay at 10 grand or higher, I would imagine, because of that.
Yeah, because he's 2 heroes you need to pay, so maybe it's 20 grand. I'm going to look at that for next episode. So, there's a couple tweets that I want to go over from the Hearthstone team. Just kidding, the Heroes team. They responded to a couple of different things from the audience. So, they asked, one, what's up with Lunara? People thought that she was underpowered, and apparently the devs did agree with us. They said they're looking to increase the shutter step, increase her HP by a little bit, and make a few other tweaks. They don't have anything set in stone yet, but they're aware of it, which is good. And oddly enough, Tyrande, who they said was overpowered, I didn't think was overpowered, but apparently, at mid levels, her win rate is lower, but at high levels, her win rate is really high, so they have said that she is overpowered and they're looking to nerf her. Now, when I play with her, I'm sorry.
I mean, to some extent, I think that's understandable because when you get out of those mid-range MMRs like you're always stuck in, then you can start to see where she really takes off. And so when you start to actually step your game up and get into some meaningful ranked play, I would expect you to start to see that. But I mean, for where you're playing right now, that it's a surprise to you is not the end of the world.
That guy's honking at you like, I don't agree. Now, but it's not when I play with her in ranked, and I say not with her because I don't use her a lot personally, but when someone on my team picks her or the other team picks her, I feel like they lose. Now I float between like a 15 and a 20 ranked play level, more around a 20, and that's obviously a little better than 50%. So I'm like the 65% bracket ish, and I don't know if they're not on top of their stuns or whatnot, because when you have a really good one, we do well. I dread it. Like, I love playing with her if I'm a monk. 7-sided strike with my healing, it works out really, really well. But just having her as the only healer generally doesn't work out very well. And there's also one other tweet I wanted to go over, and it's something that we were all very confused on, and apparently we are not the only one, so I feel a little bit better about that. Pretty much, and I hate to read this, but I'm just going to read it out. As part of our ongoing improvements for the Heroes of the Storm matchmaking system, we just implemented a new change that will affect the types of parties you may get matched up against with Quick Match. Real simple, folks. Here it is. Pay attention. Whoop, whoop, whoop. You pay attention? Solo players cannot be matched against 4 or 5 players. 2 players cannot be matched against 5 players. And 3 players can be matched against any party size, period. They're saying that this is not set in stone, like it'll still take making an even match over that, but the majority of the time that should be the majority rule. It's a step in the right direction, in my opinion. There's a couple things I don't like about these tweaks is that, if I want to play with 2 people, then we're always going to be paired against at least 2 people. So I think they should make an effort to make the pairings 2-on-2 and then, maybe 2-on-2 or equal to what you're pairing with, because getting paired as 2 people against 5 or 3 people against 5 and 2 people against 4 is not fun. And also in quick match, if you play Rexar, that means the other team's going to have a tank, and if you don't have 2 tanks, you don't have a quote-unquote real tank, because it matches tanks against tanks and healers against healers. And if you play somebody like Tyrande, or if you play somebody like, more importantly, like Tassadar, the other team's going to have a healer, most likely, and you're just going to have Tassadar, because it matches support with support. So it's a step in the right direction, because before there was plenty of times where I would play without a healer and they would have a healer, or vice versa. And I like the step in the right direction. I'm not trying to be negative, Nancy. But it also really makes me not want to play Rexar, Tyrande, or Tassadar at all in quick match, because I'm going to be faced up against a real tank or a real healer guaranteed, and there's no guarantee that I'll have a second healer or a second tank on my team. So it's almost like putting myself in a position to have a lower win rate right off the bat.
Well, you say that, but I think that to some extent you can, well, at least in the example with Rexar, because that's really the only one of those 3 that I'm familiar with, you can compensate for not being quite as tanky with just good play. I mean, you can do more damage than the other tanks, pretty much across the board, maybe with the exception of like Diablo, but your output is quite high. You just can't take the same kind of hits, but it still just takes good play. I mean, if you get Misha where she needs to be, then you're just going to be doing all kinds of damage.
Yeah, no, and I am not a Rexar expert. There's one of the few heroes I never played. But what would you rather have, for example? Misha in there, like when I'm playing as me, or would you rather ETC in there knowing that he could mosh pit, he could power slide, he could push us back, he could throw one guy to that side?
Playing.
You know what I'm saying? No, like, it's going to, the other team could have...
if it's just some random, like, 1-in-Q Rexar, I would prefer to have a better tank, like a more mainstream, simple tank. But if I'm playing, let's say Sham becomes our new number 1 Rexar. If Sham decides to play with us, then as long as he's playing Rexar, I don't care what their other tank is, because we've got a good Rexar, right? So being able to play some of the more unique or maybe awkward heroes effectively, I think will give you a better advantage, right? Just like saying, let me track it back to Warcraft.
Okay, I was coming from a point of just me queuing by myself or with like one other person that wasn't that. But yeah, that's a good point. But let's go talking about Warcraft. Sure, why not?
Yeah.
It always goes back to Warcraft.
Well, I mean, what is our frame of reference here for all of these games?
Men have a one-track mind. Warcraft.
And me. Excuse me.
No, it's not inherently one track, but my point here is
it 4 tracks like Thogar? See, I was bringing it back to Warcraft.
Explain more of your own jokes. Just do us the favor. Sometimes your humor is just too heady. Explain it more.
It's so witty that needs to be explained.
So, you could bring any bog standard tank, right? But if you see a tank normally get into your group and he's wearing DPS trinkets and, maybe not building quite as defensively as he possibly could, normally you'll be like, oh no, I don't want anything to do with this, because if you're garbage, you're going to be a paper tank. But if you have someone who's a decent tank, they can get away with that, and it's a different story. So,
gee, I feel like you're talking about somebody I know.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a couple tanks. I mean, even our last DK tried to run Breath of Syndragosa for a while before he decided that he was done.
You know I'm talking about you.
Really? I had no idea. See, you need to explain your jokes more, and then it'll make more sense.
Oh my goodness. I took ice. I thought I was going to melt my mouth faster, and it's like choking me.
No.
Anyway, so...
that's our heroes' tweets.
Yeah. How do you feel about like something like Tassadar, though? Like, if you want to play Tassadar, like, you could be a really good Tassadar, but you're still going to be fighting a team with an actual healer. Most likely, unless you get queued up against Tassadar, which is unlikely. There
are a couple odd situations where, you would prefer to have a throughput healer over somebody who just does bubbles and things like that. I would still argue that in terms of balancing, if you have a healer that doesn't provide the same kind of throughput, then they need to be valuable in a different way. Either bring competitive damage like the monk does, or do, competitive utility. And to some extent, if you play Tassadar really well, you can make the utility argument. Now, I don't think that every single Tassadar that you queue up with will be fantastic, But some of the ones that are really good actually do bring some meaningful utility to your party.
I like that. Makes sense. Sound logic.
Just balance the heroes, and then it's gonna be.
If anybody out there is really good with Tassadar or Rexar, or Tyrande with quick match, let us know in the comments if you feel that way. Yeah.
And you can boost our MMRs for us.
Any other heroes news?
No, I think that just about covers us for this week. So
yes. Now, unfortunately, everybody, we are out of time. The episode went long. We will save the story time for next week, where we will get all
story time.
Dark. I know, but hey,
I have a scary story for you guys next week.
It's a great thing when you have so much news that you run out of time. So I am not going to complain, because doing a show with no news is way more frustrating.
We will do 2 maybe next week.
No.
Overruled.
I love Overwatch.
Denied. Reaper next week.
Hey, you know what we could do? Janine could do a show.
She could have her own segment.
Yeah.
She could be like the novel of Overwatch characters.
Mm-hmm.
I would totally do that if it was more in depth, but their stories are only like that short.
Wow, she uses their stories as her personal segment and then trashes the own people who wrote the stories.
No, I would love to.
Maybe we turn it into like Janine's Overwatch fan fiction.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Where she expands the...
I would love to do that. I would totally make a story for Reaper.
Well, if you guys want to hear that...
recording equipment and all that to get that started.
Let us know if that's something that you want to hear. So, I think that brings us to the end of episode 10. We're in double digits now, everybody. Thank you for staying with us. Now, if you like our video, please like, comment, throw us a subscribe. We'd really appreciate it, and we appreciate all of your support. My name is Kimasavix.
I'm Naomi.
And I've been Wisdom. As
that's
always,
my dog, Milo.
Oh, goodness. No, don't start with that. As always, we would love to hear from everybody down in the comments, so please go ahead and flame Chemo for his inane comments and let us know what you guys think about, different kinds of communications that we've heard, right? So from some of the Heroes of the Storm people, we have what seems like really great commentary. Some of the Hearthstone stuff relative to Warcraft looks like it's great, but for some of the players doesn't seem up to par. How would you prefer the devs to communicate with us? And do you think that we, the players, are a part of the problem? So please let us know down below. We would love to hear from you guys. As always, thank you for watching, and have a good night.
Bye-bye!
Thanks. Just give me more work. It's not like I have 30 videos to edit or anything.
Hey, we are like this.
I hate you!
This talent here doesn't come by
Hello,
every
everybody,
day.
and welcome to Ahead of the Curve episode 10. This week we're talking about infighting.
Relationships
right.
in game.
All right. You ready? Like your
That's
voice
because
goes
I'm not angry yet.
lower. There you go.
Get angry!